Everybody looks like somebody I know. The older that I get, the wiser that I grow. Everywhere I look and anywhere I go, everybody looks like somebody I know. Everybody looks like somebody I've met, somebody I loved, someone I can't forget, shining in my sunrise until my sunset. Everybody looks like somebody I've met. Everyone I see has a familiar face, looking straight at me or staring into space. And when I look away, that's when I fall from grace, 'cause everyone around me has such a familiar face. And everybody looks a little bit like you. Look into their eyes, you'll tell me that it's true. And what you recognize, it's gonna see you through. 'Cause everybody looks a little and a lot like you. Everybody looks like somebody I know, in the obvious ways and those that barely show. Everywhere I look and everywhere I go, everybody looks like somebody I know. Somebody I know. In Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut, in the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another even though we were total strangers. It was like waking from a dream of separateness, of self-isolation in a special world, the world of renunciation and supposed holiness. This was the Trappist monk and peace activist Thomas Merton. He was writing in 1966, just a few years before he died unexpectedly in an accident at age 53. Like many wisdom teachers, he was realizing that the spiritual life is not only about personal reflection and practice, as important as they can be, but also about being out in the world, in relationship with others. For Merton, someone who had chosen to live apart from the world in a monastery, this came as a profound awakening. He wrote, "The sense of liberation from illusory difference was such a joy and a relief that I almost laughed out loud." He went on to say that he suddenly saw the secret beauty of all people's hearts, the core of their reality that was untouched by human failing. If only, he wrote, they could see themselves as they really are. But there is no way of telling people that they are all walking around shining like the sun. If only, he said, we could see each other that way all the time. There would be no more war, no more hatred, no more cruelty, no more greed. I suppose, he said, the big problem would be that we would all fall down and worship one another. Now, I don't know if Thomas Merton's trip to the shopping district took place during the holidays, but perhaps his words may be helpful as we move through the crowds on subways and street corners looking for our season of meaning. The joy and relief he describes seems quite different than the jolly fa-la-la-la-la that we hear on store speakers. No, it is the deeper joy of heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul connection, of feeling with, of compassion. And compassion, I think, isn't something you'd call jolly exactly. Yes, there is the knowing that we are interdependent, knowing that we are all part of a luminous web of being. And yet there is the awareness, too, that we are each of us only one person, with only so much we personally can do, and that our compassionate hearts will be open to as much sorrow as they will be to joy. More than 25 years ago, Siddhartha Gautama was also discovering the challenges of compassion. Born into a wealthy family, he too awakened from a dream of separateness when he saw for the first time the suffering outside the palace walls. He too went into the world. He too vowed to live a life of poverty and searched for meaning for 6 years before becoming enlightened through meditation under a Bodhi tree. From that day on, he brought forward a message of wisdom, kindness, patience, generosity, and compassion, providing a framework for ethical living that millions of Buddhists practice each day. We see here again the importance of both contemplation and action. Inwardness, quiet, solitude, separateness, alongside outer world connection and activity. In this season of compassion, perhaps we can intentionally make time and space for both, protecting the times of stillness, prayer, and peace in whatever form they take for us, while knowing that we are connected always with people in this world who urgently need our care and our action. For many of us in this age of hyperconnectivity, living with compassion can lead to feelings of anxiety and overwhelm at times. Our social media feeds may be overflowing with stories about tragic world events, systemic injustice, and mounting concern over the Earth's changing climate. More and more studies are now linking social media with higher rates of anxiety and depression. Many experts have identified the problem of FOMO, fear of missing out, as we compare our actual lives to the imagined lives of others. But I believe that an additional and perhaps even more important cause of stress is our continual exposure to the increasingly complex and indeed existential challenges that are now facing our world. As we open our hearts to the awareness of suffering on a global scale, we may want to have more influence than we do. We may wish we could do much more than we can. We may wonder what difference we can make when the world's needs are so enormous. That is why it seems to me Amnesty International's method of identifying individual human rights cases and making it easy to write letters, as we can all do today, is so powerful and effective. As Jewish wisdom from the Talmud states, do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Move humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. By offering each letter, one at a time, we collectively make an enormous difference, as Ted spoke about so eloquently this morning. I'm reminded of a wisdom story in which a mouse reflects on the weight of a single snowflake. Hearing his friend the dove say that a snowflake weighs nothing more than nothing, the mouse tells her, "I was sitting on a branch of a fir tree the other day when it began to snow. Not heavily, not in a giant blizzard, no, just like in a dream, with no violence at all. Since I didn't have anything better to do, I counted the snowflakes settling on the twigs and needles of the branch beside me. Their number was exactly 3,741,952. When the next snowflake dropped onto the branch, nothing more than nothing, as you say, the branch broke off." With that, the dove was taught a valuable lesson about the importance of each single voice for peace and justice. We are each of us always called into connection out of our dreams of separateness, into the shining awareness that each of us has within us, here and now, enough love to offer the world that so urgently needs it. The occasions do not have to be big and formal ones. In fact, I think they are most powerful when they are small and unexpected. I was riding the subway once when a very weary and disheveled-looking man came walking down the aisle, clutching a newspaper. He sat down beside someone and seemed to have some kind of interaction. I couldn't quite see what was going on, but I assumed he was looking for a donation. Again, I couldn't quite see. But then the man stood up, and he made his way further down the car. He saw an empty seat beside me, and he sat down. Then he held up his newspaper in front of my face and pointed at it urgently with a pencil. I suddenly realized he was showing me a crossword puzzle, and he wanted my help in solving it. I don't know about you, but I happen to love crossword puzzles. So I helped him fill in a few empty spaces before I had to get off at my stop. As I apologetically got up to leave, I noticed the woman across from us, watching with a bewildered and anxious expression. I wanted to tell her, "Please, continue the crossword puzzle. You can do this." I wished she could see herself and the man holding the paper, shining like the sun, as Thomas Merton described each person in this world. I wished she could fall down into the experience of being connected in this way, but I saw that it was too far for her to go, and I had to get off because it was my stop. In that, I identified with her too, painfully aware of the many times that I am unable to connect compassionately with someone because of my own anxiety, fatigue, busyness, or sheer inability. On the one hand, none of us can extend kindness to everyone, but in the interdependent web of life, no act of compassion is insignificant. As we say when we light our candles of joy and concern, and when we lift up our joys and sorrows here in the sanctuary, what affects any one of us affects us all. Sometimes also the compassion must be for ourselves, accepting our limitations, forgiving ourselves our mistakes, and giving ourselves the gift of self-care and kindness as often as we can this season, before we return again to the world as it is, with our hearts as open as they can be. 'Tis the season to be jolly. Fa la 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 la, la 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 la. When I chose the sermon title, 'Tis the Season of Compassion, it wasn't really my intention to put down Deck the Halls. We'll be singing it here on an upcoming Sunday for sure, and we'll be hearing it a lot if we're anywhere near any store this season. For all its jolliness and merriment, though, it also contains the following line: "Sing we joyous all together, heedless of the wind and weather. It strikes me this is really what a season of compassion is all about. Finding joy in our interconnection despite the storms we face, both together and alone. Right now, it seems to me we are not heedless. No, we are heedful of the world's storms, and perhaps at this time of year more than any other. Yet when we behold the flame of love that shines within each one of us, we can find the peace